The orchard keeper. The first time Liam Cole saw Eliza Mayhew. Mayhew, she was arguing with a maple tree. Or at least, that's what it looked like from his vantage point, leaning against the flaking paint of his grandfather's old pickup truck. "No, you listen to me," she was saying, her hands planted on her hips, her face tilted up to the sprawling branches of the sugar maple that guarded the entrance to her family's land. "You will not drop your sticky nonsense all over my car this year. We have an understanding." She was wearing a faded flannel shirt, the sleeves rolled to her elbows, and a pair of jeans so worn they were soft as cloth. Her hair, the color of wheat in late summer, was escaping a messy bun in chaotic tendrils. She was, without a doubt, the most beautiful woman Liam had ever seen. And she was scolding a tree. He cleared his throat, the gravel crunching under his boots as he approached. Tough negotiator. She spun around, her eyes, a startling, clear blue, widening for a second before narrowing in assessment. She didn't smile. "It pays to set boundaries early." "Who are you?" "Liam Cole," he said, stopping a respectful distance away. "I'm here about the caretaker's job. I spoke with Arthur Mayhew." Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed by a skepticism that seemed to settle into her very posture. "The grandson. From Chicago." She made the city sound like a foreign, slightly unsavory country. "I'm Eliza. Arthur's my dad. He's up at the house." She gave him one more sweeping look, taking in his new, stiff boots, his clean jeans, and the city-pale skin of his arms. He felt like a specimen under a microscope. "The orchard's this way." "Way," she said, turning on her heel without another word. "Might as well see what you're getting into." Liam followed, the scent of damp earth and apple blossoms filling his senses. He'd fled Chicago a week ago, the ghost of a failed engagement and a corporate job that felt like a slow death by 1,000 paper cuts haunting his every step. His grandfather's passing had left the old man's small Vermont farmhouse empty, a silent beacon. When he'd seen the ad for a part-time caretaker at Mayhew's orchard, a sprawling, 50-acre piece of land that bordered his grandfather's property, it felt like a sign. A chance to breathe, to fix something with his hands instead of a spreadsheet. The orchard unfolded before them, rows upon rows of gnarled apple trees stretching towards the green mountains in the hazy distance. It was both majestic and struggling. He could see it in the way some branches hung limp, in the patches of weeds choking the bases of the trees. "It's a lot of work," Eliza said, her voice cutting through his thoughts. "It's not a hobby. This land, it's in our blood. It's not a placeholder until something better comes along." "I'm not looking for a placeholder," Liam said, his voice quieter than he intended. She glanced at him, and for a moment, the hard edge in her eyes softened. "We'll see." Arthur Mayhew was a big man, broad-shouldered with a handshake that could crush stone, but his eyes were kind. He showed Liam the small, one-room cabin that came with the job, a simple structure with a wood stove, a cot, and a view of the western ridge that made Liam's heart ache with a longing he didn't know he possessed. "The work is simple, but it's hard," Arthur said, echoing his daughter. "Pruning, spraying, weeding, mending fences. Eliza runs the farm stand and the cider operation. You'll answer to her." Liam's first week was a study in humiliation. His hands, soft from a life at a keyboard, blistered and bled. He tangled irrigation hose, misidentified a Gravenstein for a Macintosh, and nearly toppled a ladder while trying to prune a high branch. Through it all, Eliza was a quiet, efficient presence, correcting his mistakes with a clipped patience that was more damning than outright anger. She was a force of nature, capable of driving a tractor, diagnosing blight on a leaf, and balancing the farm's books with equal competence. He was a city boy, an outsider, and he felt it in his bones. The turning point came on a cool, drizzly afternoon. He was attempting to repair a section of deer fence, his fingers clumsy with the cold and the unfamiliar wire cutters. The rain was seeping through his jacket, and frustration was a hot coal in his chest. He was about to give up, to pack his bags and admit defeat, when Eliza appeared beside him, holding a thermos. "Here," she said, thrusting it towards him. "Coffee. My dad's brew. It'll put hair on your chest." He took it, muttering a thanks. The coffee was strong and bitter, exactly what he needed. She watched him struggle with the wire for another minute before sighing. "You're fighting it. It's wire, not a corporate takeover. You have to work with it, not against it." She took the cutters from his hands, her fingers brushing his, a brief, electric contact. With a few deft moves, she twisted, looped, and secured the fence. "See, it's about understanding the material." He looked from the mended fence to her face, rainwater beading on her lashes. "I'm trying," he said, and it was the most honest thing he'd said in years. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "I know." After that, a fragile truce formed. She started teaching him, not just ordering him. She showed him how to read the soil, how to listen to the trees, how to predict a frost by the smell of the air. He, in turn, fixed the ancient laptop she used for her accounts, showed her how to streamline her inventory system, and built her a new, sturdier set of shelves for the farm stand. He learned her story in fragments. She'd gone to college in Boston for agricultural science, but had come back when her mother got sick. She'd stayed after her mother passed, a silent promise to keep her father's dream, and her family's legacy, alive. The orchard was her inheritance and her burden. One evening, as they were closing up the farm stand, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and violet, he found her staring at a photograph tacked to the wall. It showed a younger Arthur, his arm around a smiling woman with Eliza's eyes, standing in front of a much younger, smaller orchard. She loved this place, Eliza said softly, her back to him. She used to say the apples tasted sweeter because they were grown with joy. "Is that true?" Liam asked. She turned, her expression unguarded for once, filled with a vulnerability that stole his breath. "It's been a long time since I tasted that kind of sweetness." As spring bled into summer, Liam felt the city grime washing off his soul, replaced by the rich, dark soil of the orchard. His hands grew calloused, his skin tanned. The hollow feeling in his chest began to fill, not with ambition or achievement, but with the simple satisfaction of a day's hard work and the quiet beauty of the land. And he found himself watching Eliza. He watched the way she tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear when she was concentrating, the way her laugh sounded when her father told a dumb joke, the way her face softened when she patted the neck of their old draft horse, Bo. He was falling in love with her, as steadily and inevitably as the apple trees were ripening their fruit. The realization hit him one hot July night as they sat on the porch of his cabin, sharing a bottle of homemade cider and watching fireflies dance in the twilight. She was telling a story about her mother teaching her to can peaches, and the sound of her voice, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners, felt like coming home. He reached out, his hand covering hers on the wooden step between them. She stilled, her story trailing off. The air was thick with the scent of honeysuckle and unspoken words. "Eliza," he whispered. She looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. In the dim light, he saw the same war he felt inside himself, the fear, the hope, the terrifying, wonderful possibility. She didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers laced with his. That was the beginning of their summer. A stolen, golden time. They spent the days working side by side, their evenings exploring the woods and streams that bordered their properties. He kissed her for the first time in the golden light of the barn, the air sweet with hay, and it tasted like a promise. He told her about Chicago, about the fiancé who wanted a different life, the job that suffocated him. She told him her fears, that the orchard was failing, that she wasn't enough to save it, that she was destined to be alone on this land. "You're not alone," he'd tell her, holding her close under a blanket of stars. Not anymore. But summer, like all good things, was fleeting. The trouble started with the early autumn rains. A blight, a nasty fungus called apple scab, began to spread through the orchard, turning leaves black and scarring the fruit. The harvest, their main source of income, was threatened. The stress turned Arthur grim and Eliza frantic. The easy laughter that had filled the summer air was replaced by tense silences and worried conversations about loans and crop insurance. Liam threw himself into the fight, researching organic treatments, working from dawn until dusk to try and stem the tide. It wasn't enough. One afternoon, a man in a suit that screamed "banker" showed up, his shiny sedan looking alien next to the muddy farm trucks. Liam watched from a distance as Arthur and Eliza spoke with him on the porch, their postures stiff. When the man left, Eliza didn't come find him. She went straight to the barn and started viciously cleaning tack that was already spotless. Liam found her there, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He went to her, turning her into his arms. She buried her face in his chest, her fists clutching his shirt. "He's calling the loan," she choked out. "The blight, last year's poor harvest, he says we're too high risk. We have 60 days. The weight of her despair was a physical thing. He held her tighter, his mind racing. "We'll figure it out, Liza. We will." But the "we" felt fragile. The outside world, the one he'd escaped, was crashing back in. A week later, his phone rang. It was his old boss. The company was restructuring. They needed someone with his expertise for a critical project. A 6-month contract. A salary that was more than the orchard made in 3 years. He didn't mention it to Eliza, but the seed was planted. It was a way out. For him, and for her. He broached the subject that night, as they sat in his cabin, a single lamp casting long shadows. "I got a call today. From my old firm in Chicago." Eliza went very still. "Oh, they're offering me a contract. A short one. 6 months. The money, Liza, it would be enough. Enough to pay off the loan. To save the orchard." The silence that followed was deafening. He watched the hope in her eyes war with a dawning, cold understanding. "You'd go back?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "It's just for 6 months. I'd come back. Would you?" She stood up, pacing the small room like a caged animal. "You'd go back to your skyscrapers and your spreadsheets, and you think you'd just come back to this?" She gestured vaguely towards the window, towards the dark, struggling orchard. "It's not about that. It's about saving your home. And what is this, Liam?" She demanded, stopping in front of him, her eyes blazing. "A project, a charity case. You play farmer for a summer, fall for the local girl, and then ride in like a white knight to save the day before going back to your real life." "You know it's not like that." He stood, facing her. "This is my real life. You are my real life. Is it, or is this just your beautiful, rustic escape? A story you'll tell your city friends? You don't understand, Liam. You can't. This land, it's a lifetime. It's good years and bad, it's blight and debt and back-breaking work. It's not a summer romance." Her words were arrows, each one finding its mark. "So that's what I am. A summer romance. Tears were streaming down her face now. I don't know what you are.
I thought I thought you were staying. But you have one foot out the door. You always have. This this is a solution for a tourist, not for someone who belongs. Here. She turned and walked out, the door clicking shut with a finality that shattered his heart. The next few days were agony. They moved around each other like ghosts, speaking only when necessary. The offer from Chicago sat in his inbox, a ticking clock. He packed his bags, his chest a hollow cavity of pain. The morning he was set to leave, he went to find Arthur. The old man was in the barn, sharpening a scythe. "I'm sorry, Arthur," Liam said, his voice rough. Arthur looked up, his gaze knowing and sad. "You're a good man, Liam. You brought light back into this place. Into her—" He sighed. "But Eliza's right about one thing. This life chooses you. You can't just visit it." Liam nodded, the truth of it a stone in his gut. He got into his truck and drove down the long, winding driveway. He didn't look back. He couldn't. Chicago was a sensory assault. The noise, the pace, the gray concrete. He moved through the project with a robotic efficiency, the high salary piling up in his bank account. But he was empty. The ghost that had followed him from the city had been replaced by a new one, the ghost of Eliza's laugh, the scent of apple blossoms, the feeling of rich soil in his hands. He lasted 2 months. One night, staring out his high-rise window at the sea of lights that wasn't stars, he knew with a certainty that settled deep in his bones. Eliza was wrong. He wasn't a tourist. The orchard, the land, her, it was his home. He hadn't been trying to save it for her. He'd been trying to save it for them, for their future. He quit the next day. He withdrew the money he'd earned, packed his truck with the few things that mattered, and pointed it east, towards Vermont. The leaves were turning when he drove back down the dirt road to Mayhew's orchard, a blaze of red and gold and orange. His heart was in his throat. He had no plan, only a desperate, hopeful need. He found her in the far field, the one with the oldest trees, the ones that had survived a century of blights and storms. She was on a ladder, harvesting the last of the apples, her movements weary. She looked thinner, the shadows under her eyes telling the story of a difficult autumn. He got out of the truck and walked towards her, his boots making no sound on the carpet of fallen leaves. She must have felt his presence because she stilled, then slowly turned. The look on her face, shock, hope, fear, anger, nearly broke him. "You're back," she said, her voice flat. "I never left," he replied, stopping at the base of her ladder. "Not really." She climbed down, facing him, her arms crossed over her chest, a shield. "Why?" He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded stack of papers. He handed it to her. It was a cashier's check made out to Mayhew's orchard for the full amount of the loan. And beneath it, a deed. She stared at it, her brow furrowed. "I don't understand. It's not a gift," he said, his voice soft but steady. "It's an investment. My life savings, plus what I made in Chicago. I went to the bank yesterday. I paid off the loan, and I bought my grandfather's land, the land that borders yours." Her eyes flew to his, wide with disbelief. "I'm not here to save you, Eliza," he said, taking a step closer. "I'm here to stand with you. This life, the blight and the debt and the back-breaking work, it's my life, too, if you'll have me. I'm not asking for a summer. I'm asking for a lifetime, for all of it." The defiance in her posture crumbled. A tear traced a path through the dust on her cheek. "You came back," she whispered, as if finally believing it. "I told you I would," he said, closing the distance between them, his hand coming up to cup her face. "I told you I wasn't alone anymore. And neither are you." She looked into his eyes, and for the first time since he'd met her, he saw no walls, no fear, only the clear, open truth. She leaned into his touch. "The apples," she said, a small, watery smile finally gracing her lips. "Taste one." Confused, he plucked a nearby apple from its branch. It was a variety he didn't recognize, a deep ruby red. He took a bite. The flavor exploded on his tongue. Tart, sweet, complex, and utterly perfect. "It's the sweetness," she said, her voice full of wonder. "It's back." He dropped the apple and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the longing, the hope, the certainty of the last 2 months. It was a kiss of homecoming, of promise, of a future written not in city lights, but in the rich, enduring soil of the land they would build together. In the dappled light of the old orchard, surrounded by the trees that had witnessed their beginning, Liam Cole finally knew what it was to be rooted, to be home.